Across every creative medium, color plays a huge role in our understanding and perception of art and the world at large. And a recent viral TikTok has people yet again thinking about how differently we can all see the same thing.
Is this blue or gray?
You're colorblind, dude. What? I am not colorblind.
Colorblindness and monochromaticness have long been used symbolically in film and TV as metaphors for larger ideas. And as we've all become more and more connected to visual mediums, many people are beginning to realize the impact it can have in their everyday real lives as well.
Blue flower, red thorns, blue flower, red thorns, blue flower, red thorns. This would be so much easier if I wasn't colorblind.
So what's really going on with our perception of color and color vision deficiencies? And what does it all mean? Let's take a closer look. Across visual mediums, color is used to elicit feelings and set certain moods, to instantly give information about a person or setting without having to say a thing. A blue room could indicate a level of coldness or loneliness. Red clothing could convey an inner passion or spark, or danger. Green can recall nature or abundance, and so forth.
On Wednesdays, we wear pink.
In that same vein, a lack of color, or a color palette that is distinctly different from the one we're used to, is also a big way to tell us about the world we're entering.
Look at me! I'm pasty!
High saturation could make the colors feel almost unnaturally vibrant, in line with an inner turmoil or zeal. Low saturation can lead to elements blending together and taking on a more dreamlike quality. Post the advent of color, film has continued to enjoy dipping back into that world stylistically, as an opportunity to really drive home the impact of color itself. Take Pleasantville, for example, which finds David and Jennifer getting sucked into the 1950s world of a black and white TV show. As they begin to shake things up in town, particularly by bringing in knowledge and helping others connect with their own sexualities, moments of epiphany are signaled with literal bursts of color.
What happened? 1 minute, everything's fine. The next, what went wrong?
Nothing went wrong. People change.
In The Giver, after an apocalyptic event, only the one person who is allowed to have memories of the before times and his protege are allowed to see in color, an ability which has been stripped from everyone else. Here we can see the symbolic importance of color, as it is directly tied to the community's ability to feel emotions and recall memories. Color, and our perception of it, is entirely relative.
You'll likely agree that the screen behind me is green, but you're only agreeing on the word you're using to identify this color. So we can't say for certain that what you're seeing is the exact shade and hue that your neighbor is seeing.
Even for those of us who have full color vision, how we see colors can be totally dependent on a number of factors, from personal interpretation to lighting differences.
It's the blue wire with the white stripe, not, I repeat, not the black wire with the yellow stripe.
Color blindness specifically doesn't pop up quite as often on screen, and when it does, it's very often used for humor in bomb defusal plots.
Okay, on 3, cut the gray wire.
I don't have a gray wire. I have red, green, and yellow.
That's weird. I have light gray, medium gray, dark gray.
Though it's not always presented as a negative trait.
This, subliminal signal, could color be a factor in it?
Maybe.
I'm red-green colorblind.
His inability to perceive the color red could render him immune to the psychotropic effects.
Color blindness isn't an inability to see any colors, though that does actually happen in very rare cases, but instead usually just means that you have a more difficult time differentiating between some different colors.
The analogy I always use is that if you have a pack of 36 colored pencils, I can only see maybe 12 shades of those colored pencils.
While there are some injuries and eye diseases that can cause color blindness, generally it's genetic, and so people are born with it.
There's also evidence.
I'm not colorblind, am I?
I'm afraid you are.
And because it doesn't usually impact people's lives in a very big way, outside of a few instances we'll dive into in a moment, many people aren't even aware that they are colorblind until well into adulthood.
Those shoes are not brown, they're green. What the hell are you talking about, man?
Those shoes are green.
Because of idiots, all right? They're as brown as
what
money.
What color is Kermit the Frog?
Brown.
There are actually multiple different types of color vision deficiencies. According to the National Eye Institute, red-green is the most common type of color blindness. This can present as greens looking more red, reds looking more green, or a complete inability to tell the difference between the two. The second and less common type of color vision deficiency is blue-yellow, where more colors can get muddled. And third is monochromacy, or the complete inability to see colors, which does actually exist, though it's quite rare. So how does seeing the world differently actually affect people? Color is such a huge part of how sighted people experience the world, so finding out that you aren't having the same experience as everyone else, and are in fact missing out on things, can be kind of a bummer.
You're wearing a green sweater. That could be brown, by the way.
I'm wearing a gray sweater.
There you go.
Writing about her experience with color vision deficiency and wearing corrective and chroma glasses, Brooke Swanson wrote for The Cut, "I realized that even when I see a color accurately, I miss the shade and tone of things around it. The highlights and shadows that create dimension and give life to things. That's what got to me the most. It wasn't discovering that green to me looks tan. What felt like a strike to my heart was realizing that, by comparison, my world is very flat." While colorblindness doesn't have a huge impact on most people's lives, it can cause problems on occasion. It can make some everyday tasks more difficult, like driving due to difficulty differentiating between red and green lights. Or it can, in a few instances, stop you from being able to follow the career path you desire. One of the most memorable moments of Little Miss Sunshine, for example, comes when Dwayne realizes that he won't be able to become a fighter pilot because he's colorblind.
What happened?
He's colorblind. He can't fly.
Mostly, however, the biggest issue people struggle with is the shock of, fully into adulthood, realizing that they've been seeing the world around them so differently from everyone else all this time.
Colorblind?
Please tell me, these shoes are brown, right?
No, the shoes are green.
Definitely green.
Okay, you both are crazy. Did you text him and tell him?
Winston!
This has been a big point of conversation recently thanks to a woman who made a quick TikTok video to get others' opinions. When she was attempting to sell what she thought was a blue chair online, a potential buyer pushed back asking for more and more pictures because it seemed to be a gray chair. Eventually, Kristen took to TikTok to see what her friends thought, panning over to show a very clearly gray chair, as well as a very gray couch that she was also convinced was dark blue. The TikTok went viral, both for people laughing along with her as she continued going around her house realizing that things didn't look the way she thought.
Let me show you some blue. I swear to God, if someone says that this is also gray,
as well as other people who were realizing for the first time that they too might be colorblind. The couch conundrum has been of major interest because the internet always loves to fight over what color some object actually is, but also because it brings to light something interesting. Females make up a very small percentage of people known to have colorblindness, to the point that it's often thought of as a specifically male trait. And indeed, it is a genetic variation of the X chromosome. So women need to have a father with it and a mother who carries the recessive gene for it to appear. But many of the people now realizing that they're colorblind are also women themselves. And so realizing that maybe it isn't as rare as was once thought. While color vision deficiency might lead to some problems here and there, at the end of the day, it's generally not much of an issue for most people that live with it.
Color blindness can actually be an advantage in some situations. Color can actually impede our ability to see patterns and textures and borders. By cutting right through that, if you're colorblind, you can see the camouflaged object better.
Even the woman from TikTok hasn't really been that affected by it. It never stopped her from living her life or doing her job. Colorblindness is sometimes presented as a roadblock to creativity in the arts, but in fact, plenty of renowned artists have had some level of color vision deficiency and still created great art. Claude Monet, for example, began to develop colorblindness with age. Dr. Howard Markle wrote for PBS News, "By 1918, the artist said that he could no longer perceive colors with the same intensity, nor could he accurately interpret sunlight, a keystone of the Impressionist school. The color red, for example, became muddy. The color pink began to pale. The intermediate or lower tones, too, escaped him. But even so, during this period, he was able to paint his iconic water lilies." Illustrator Lauren Long, upon finding out that he was colorblind as a child, feared it meant that he'd never get to follow his dream of being an artist.
And he said, it's no big deal unless your son wants to be an electrician or an artist.
But it didn't stop him from going on to become a well-known children's book illustrator.
And she said, Lauren, your art is beautiful. Don't let anybody ever tell you you can't be an artist. My mom's reaction in that swift moment saved my life.
There's been a factoid that Van Gogh was colorblind floating around for a long time, but most researchers now believe that that wasn't the case. Apparently, he was even specifically tested for color blindness at one point and found not to have any visual impairment. Since their arrival in the 2010s, there have been waves of viral videos of people with color blindness seeing quote-unquote normal colors for the first time with the aid of corrective glasses. But the truth is that they don't work for every type and degree of color blindness, and it's not something that has to be fixed or changed. Even though she enjoys being able to see in full color with the assistance of her glasses, Swanson wrote that she wouldn't want to change herself. I didn't want to permanently correct my color vision. As an adult, I can appreciate it, because I know my perception of the world is different and there's value in that. We all see the world through our own lens. So instead of trying to force ourselves to all see the same thing, we can instead focus on appreciating our own view.
Even though what you see and what I see might be different, isn't it powerful to understand that all that's really going on is just a difference in our interpretations of the same thing?
That's the take. Click here to watch the video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.